What drives you? What inspires you? Let's ignite your why. Welcome back to Ignite Your Why podcast. I'm your host, Austin T. Gullett, and we're here to have genuine conversations with authentic people to help amplify their voice and figure out what ignites their why. Today, we get to catch up with the one and only Timothy F. Bryson. We last heard from Tim in December of 2021, and as you can imagine, a lot has changed since then. So with that being said, welcome back, Tim. How are you doing today?
Doing good, bro. Good to see you again, man. Can't believe it's been a year and some change, year and a half almost, which is kind of wild. A lot has changed.
Time has been flying.
Legit.
So the last time we talked, you were working at the University of Maryland. You were in finals week during your grad program, or your doctorate program, I should say. I don't want to discredit you.
You're good.
So what's been going on? What's changed? What's your life been like over the last year and a half, man?
No, for sure. So, I mean, again, good to be back. And I appreciate you inviting me back to share some updates in my life. But again, was at Maryland within the last year and a half, left Maryland, started a new job in the NIL education space. Since started that job, June 2022, I recently laid off a few weeks ago due to budget cuts. So now I'm in this space of really free agency of the transfer portal, depending on if you like pro sports or college sports a little bit more. I'm really evaluating one, like what's for me. Two, what opportunity do I want to create and or add value and contribute to? But then three, I think to the purpose of this podcast and what you've created in this platform is how do I continue to not just ignite my why, but also continue to flame my why, which is something I think I put on the back burner in support of other organizations, whether that be Maryland or MOGL or any other third party that I've had the opportunity to work with over the last year and a half. And so I'm in the space of job searching. I'm in the space of scaling my own business walk with TFB. And then in the space, again, just turned 32 a few weeks, at least last month. So in the space of like, what's next for me life-wise, given that I'm in this time period right now, not because I turned 30, but I think coincidentally it's around the same time period to which I'm like, where do I want to be? Where do I want to live? With whom do I want to be in community with, et cetera. So very exciting time for sure.
So does it feel different that you're 30 now? Like a lot of people say like...
Not really, man. I think for me, it was March was wild. I mean, 2023 has been wild to this point, but I think in March, what did I do? Was selected to be part of the inaugural African Descendant Social Entrepreneurship Workshop in Baltimore, which is sponsored by the U.S. Department of State Biden-Harris Agenda, which is super dope. Immediately left that experience and went to Cuba on March 18th, which is actually my birthday. So I was flying to Cuba on my birthday, was in Cuba for 10 days. Had to travel for work, through a birthday party April 1. So I really haven't had the opportunity, and then through a summit last week, so I haven't had the opportunity to really just sit and reflect. I think that part of this, again, this experience, being laid off is like really taking the time to reflect, to refine, to re-engage with my purpose, right? My why, again, point of this platform. But to answer your question, 30, I forget I'm 30 until someone asks me, and everyone thinks I'm 20 something anyway. So we're in a good space.
Everyone keeps saying like I'm old, and I'm like, I'm only turning 27. Like I turned 27 this week. So I'm like, I don't feel old. And people's like, when you get to 30, your knees will start to hurt. You'll have all these things. And I'm just like, no. But you're newly 30. So maybe I can check in like a few months and see how things have changed.
Yeah, legit. Let me know. It's been good, man. It's really good.
So as you mentioned, like you were recently like laid off from your position. Could you kind of tell us like what you did during your time at your old position, and how are you navigating that transition to now? Because obviously when you go from working full time to having a ton of free time, how are you navigating that space as well?
Yes, I think my previous role, I served as the director of education and compliance at MOGL, which is a third party NIL tech solution for universities, colleges, brands, and collectives across the NCAA ecosystem. And so in that role, I got to educate athletes on, how to build their brand, how to remain compliant, educate brands on how they can work with athletes, work with collectives. So these are alumni or, friends and family of the university that want to support NIL athlete experience. And so that's what I got to do. As far as navigating the time, again, this really been the first week. That's been the first week to which I've had air quote nothing to do. I say air quote on purpose because I think there's always something to do, especially in my world. I'm engaged in a lot of different things. But the last 2 weeks, I think, again, I'll talk about this more on my podcast actually tomorrow. So, if you listen to this, you already have access to this, but um, it's been a time to where I spent more time, I think, questioning like what happened, why it happened, especially given the work that I did do, the receipts I have in regards to the success I had in my role, and in becoming more curious in regards to what's next, right? Becoming more curious, becoming more prepared, becoming more refined, and saying, like, yo, this is what I stand for. This is what I want. These are my non-negotiables. This is where I want to live. Like, I get to now create a life for me.
Hmm.
I think, again, like I said before, I think I spent too much time before, like, investing in others. And so I listened to the sermon by Pastor Furtick down at Elevation Church. I forget the exact title of the sermon, but essentially one thing he said was, for the longest time, I resisted the gifts that have been given to me. So I'm at a point now where I'm no longer resisting that, really trying to embrace and want to embrace that and see where that ends up, which I don't think is going to be in the U.S., which I'm totally fine with. But excited to see like like the summer that I hosted last week, but also some other things I have coming up. I was going to continue to help illuminate the path for me to continue walking in my purpose as well.
I think you mentioned one important thing, right? I think sometimes when we are like a helper, like we love helping other people, we often forget the most important thing, which is ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's so
Mm-hmm.
easy to get caught up in doing X, Y, and Z and realizing like I got to take care of me. I got to do what's best for me and I have to
Mm-hmm.
really like it's something I'm still struggling with my personal self, like it's just like it's okay to put yourself first,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think when you are so used to just putting others before you, it's hard to take that step back and be like, okay, how can I take care of myself? Because if you've never really done it, it's
It's
hard
good.
to figure it out. So it's interesting to see because I feel like your journey is just beginning, right? I feel like everything
Mm-hmm.
happens for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
There's a blessing behind everything that happens. So who knows where this journey is going to take you? It's obviously something that you have to figure out on your own. And I think you are in the right headspace. You have the right mindset behind it. Because I feel like when you go through situations that you're going through, it's easy to just throw in the towel and just be like, oh, fuck, I give up. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But in reality, you're just like, okay, like let me recircle, let me turn around and like, how can I make this negative thing that's going on a positive? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's just inspiring itself. So you mentioned your podcast is coming back. I know it's been a while for you. And like you said, like you got so into like helping other people that you kind of forgot to take care of yourself and do things that make you happy.
Yep.
So are you looking to like revamp the podcast? Are you looking to just kind of continue where you kind of left off? Kind of give us an update. And if no one's familiar with his podcast, Walk with TFB, make sure you guys check it out. They have
Mm.
amazing conversations on there and they're super insightful. But tell us a little bit more about it, man.
Yeah, I mean, the podcast I think is huge. I think what we've seen, not the success I've just seen with like on our platform, but really the sport community abroad. So we've seen like Draymond Green has a podcast, Asia Wilson had a podcast with Collier, Paul George, Pat Beverly. A lot of professional athletes are starting their own podcast to create one community. Well, someone's probably teaching them, but creating community, number one, but then also owning their voice to the mass audience. And so for me, I think where I'm at the podcast now is to say, okay, monetization is still something I've negotiated going back and forth, but a strong point of emphasis for me from storytelling and community building. However, again, going back to the point about resisting the gifts that I've had or that I do have and will continue to refine is that like TFB, Walk with TFB, my research, everything is global on purpose, global on purpose.
Mhm.
And so the pivot and really the expansion and I guess evolution is a better word, is going to become in um, the countries that we engage with, the type of guests we have on the show, and not only being U.S. North American or global North centered, but we're going, what is that, east? We're going global south, and really bring other perspectives that I think again we've seen success with in the summit I keep referring to, the Internationalization Athletic Summit that I hosted last week with having 19 guests from 8 countries and 5 continents, right? And so we're able to do that in a week of programming on Zoom. How do I also really globally expand the Walk with TFB mission and podcast platform to be like, yo, like we are not just education, sport, and culture for the US, but really globally. And here's how we help athletes connect to brands. Here's how we help athletic organizations become more global and really engage more globally. But here's how we also help to illuminate, emphasize, and share the stories of those who are continuing to walk in their purpose as well.
And I think your podcast is just amazing because you have people from all different kinds of walks of life. And me being a sport junkie and just going through the sport admin program at Xavier, I find it very interesting the conversations you have because
Mhm.
I feel like I was never really exposed to the kind of sport you talk about sometimes, if that makes sense. I
Mhm.
feel like my program was very cookie cutter in a sense. No knock to Xavier's program. It landed
Yeah.
me to where I am today, and I'm super grateful for it. But there's different aspects of the industry that weren't necessarily talked about. But then again, this was back in 2019.
Yep.
So a lot has changed since then. We went through a global pandemic. We have NIL, sorry, NIL
No,
now.
yeah.
So like it's just a lot has changed, and I think it's just very interesting how I I love how student athletes are now able to make money off of their name and their brand.
Mhm.
I think it's very evident. I think it's going to grow the game in the long run, especially on the women's side. I keep thinking back to the national championship between LSU and Iowa and
Mhm.
the hype that was around it. But also, I just think of all the sponsorships that these players are going to get because of the platform that they have. And I just think of like Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, Flage, like all of them. And it's just like they have a brand and they're actually making more money now than what they would in the WNBA, which is
Mhm.
fucking insane to me.
Mhm. Mhm. Wait, I mean, wait till it gets to the high school level, bro. I mean, wait till it gets more adopted and I think embraced at the high school level,
I think
especially in Cincinnati.
it's definitely going to come.
Mhm.
Definitely. I think Cincinnati has a great market of student athletes, especially at the high school level. And I think it will honestly take it to the next level. And it's kind of hard when you have like state legislators like OSHA, KHSA, different things of that
Mhm.
nature. How do they incorporate those bylaws into there? It's just there's so many ins and outs that you just think of. But for you to work in this industry, what is the importance of NIL and everything of that nature?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is ownership. I think we've seen, and again, obviously, we're having to work for one of the companies that a lot of, I mean, what it came down to prior to NIL was that athletes were being exploited by their, college athletic departments of the universities, whatever. And so NIL helped to provide another, whether another opportunity and or an out for them for athletes to take ownership of their name, image, and likeness to monetize in their own way. Now, a couple of things I want to make sure I note, both on the record, but also for future conversation. NIL is primarily for U.S. domestic athletes. I mean, not for international athletes. There's a whole podcast season I might host in future years to talk about the international college athlete experience. So that's one way in which the NIL legislation is still exclusive and excludes international athletes from being able to monetize. The second thing is that what we're talking about really with NIL, but also the transfer portal, if you want to throw that in there, speaking of Angel Reese, is power, right? It's power and at its core. And so I think power, control, and surveillance look different prior to NIL. And so what we're seeing now, whether it be athletic departments, third parties, or other forms of stakeholders who want control or want a piece of the pie, if you will, they're searching for control. They're searching for power. And so I think the pivotal thing with NIL is helping athletes directly, right, understand their role and taking ownership of their NIL and empowering them, educating them, equipping them with the skills, knowledge, and personnel to make decisions on their own, uh, with the help and or support of others should they want it, but not forcing or encouraging them to rely on someone outside of themselves to connect with brands or to facilitate brand deals, because just like exploitation happened prior to NIL, it's still happening now. It'll look different in future iterations as well. But I think right now what we really need to focus on, what I think is what a lot of personnel are quite honestly scared or fearful of, is educating athletes, helping them understand the power that they have in controlling both the landscape, but also the future of college athletics, because we see it happen right before our eyes.
I just think back to like the previous conversation we had when we first talked on the podcast. So if you haven't
Mm-hmm.
checked that episode out, it's season 3, episode 6. I forgot to mention that in the beginning, but make sure you go
Mm-hmm.
check it out.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned like your experience as a student athlete, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you think back to, I don't know how long ago that was when you were a student athlete, how do you think NIL would have changed your experience?
See, I don't think I was. So I ran for a year at Coastal, and I was 12. It was 12 years ago, 11 and a half years ago now, which is kind of wild. But um, I think for me that it would have been very similar to my college experience. And here's why I say that. So went to Coastal Carolina, for those who listened to the pod or didn't know, whatever. Ran track for a year, transferred to South Carolina, Columbia, and I had to choose between sport and school, whatever. Chose school, but as an athletic training student in my program over the next 4 years, there was a required amount of hours I had to complete per semester. And I'm not going to say I was the disruptor, but I was a disruptor in helping to change that rule because one, it was inequitable. And two, it made no sense trying to make people work 150 hours per semester when they still needed to work for free, when they still needed to work, you make money to either to pay rent, I don't know, eat lunch, dinner, breakfast, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And so my role at South Carolina, even as an athletic training student, was helping to disrupt current systems and practices that did not reflect nor were inclusive of the experiences of those who needed to work, who wanted to have an experience outside of the athletic training program, etc. But I had to own my NIL, if you will, own my own experience and then disrupt and shape the world around me. I think in a similar way, again, like Walk with TFB or something my grandma told me, at least coming up, is that the only thing you have in this world is your name and your character, which is essentially your brand, right? And so it's been amazing seeing the support, the endorsement, the job applications that people have sent me even prior to or even after being laid off. It's like, yo, like it's not a reflection, was definitely a reflection of the work that you've done, but also a reflection of the brand, if you will, the name, image, and likeness that you have within this higher ed college sport ecosystem that quite honestly, whether you're laid off or not, cannot be replaced or tainted. So I think for me that it would have been a little bit different just again because of the environment that I would have been operating in. But as far as being able to say like, this is what I stand for, this is who I am, this is what I'm going to do, and you can't tell me anything different. I think I would have done something similar, but probably more so focused on the career piece, not the monetization aspect of it all.
Hey, I definitely think like your grandma has a point, right? What we leave behind is definitely going to be our brand and what people believe of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my mentor always told me, he's like, I don't care what job you have in this world, you're going to be the best person at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't give people an opportunity to speak bad about you when you're not there, right?
Yep.
So if you're putting your best foot forward every single day, then that's really all that matters, right? And you can tell just by the way you are and the connections you have that you're making an impact every single day, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're doing something right. For
Mm-hmm.
you to have the pool to get connections across the world, not just here locally, but like across the world, shows the kind of person you are and the work ethic you have, and it's truly admirable. And I think
Appreciate it.
it's awesome, honestly.
I appreciate that.
Teach me your ways.
No, let me know, man. Happy to come to the high school and talk to the athletes, man. But yeah, it's, like I said, it's not a. It's get to your point, right? The whole Uniting Your Why is legit me continuing to identify what I'm passionate about, inspire, vision, and walking purpose. It's literally it. Like, there's no magic formula, no bullshit like that. It's like I feel like doing something. I'm not thinking about it. Recruit the people I know, I need help with, and go do it. Like I don't know. There's not. Like I said, there's no recipe. There's no,
Yeah,
man.
it's the
Smart or
grind.
not.
It's the grind to want to do better, and the grind and the will to actually get it done. And
Straight
I think
up.
that's what's super important. So you mentioned you talking about finding your new why and finding your purpose again. The last time we talked, a lot of your focus was on student athletes helping them become career ready, and just kind of using your experiences from being a student and being a grad student and going to your doctorate program, and really just helping these athletes become better individuals and helping them realize that there's more to life than just like being an athlete, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how has, if that has changed, how has it changed over time, and what is it now that ignites your why?
Yeah, I think it's only evolved, and then I think I really again have decided to separate myself from. This is good. I might put this in my podcast too. Shit, this is a great just reflection I just had. But separate myself from the comfortable or the comfortability of knowing what to do, how to do it, and stepping into what I know I'm able to do, but that has not either been done yet, and or may be a risk that I didn't necessarily want to take. Shit, even 2 months ago. And so initially we focused on helping college athletes, pursue their evolving career goals, which is still true. But I'm hyper focused on purpose on international college athletes. And so what my why is right now, if you will, to from a business standpoint, but also from a purpose standpoint, is helping international college athletes transition in and out of U.S. higher education. So how am I helping the recruitment process? How am I helping their adjustment process, socialization in U.S. campuses? What's the experience while they're here as far as major selection, being able to not just adjust, but also thrive during questions and answers of like, what's Labor Day or what's a tailgate? Like how am I helping that process as well. But then the main thing is this career piece out. How am I helping them secure employment in the U.S., their home country, or a third country when they graduate? That's a huge gap, not just in the literature, but also in programming practices in the NCA model, because many people focus on the adjustment, the transition, the
Hmm.
recruitment. And it's so much more than that. And so you have athletes who are, whether becoming national champions or first team All-Americans in their respective sport, these same athletes may also compete on their country's national team, whether that be at mega events like the Olympics or other more regional tournaments as well. But they're not getting any support to help them in their transition out of sport, out of competition when they leave U.S. higher ed. So how do I not just address that gap, but really alter the model in regards to what universities and colleges should be doing to support all athletes, not just the ones that are from the U.S.
I think that's important. Is like you're not just doing this because you love it. You're nurturing them as a whole, right? I think that's the biggest thing is sometimes like we forget that piece, right? We do the work while they're here, but then once they go off, it's kind of most people just kind of forget and like they're just like, oh, well, good luck. And I think that's the biggest thing is you're taking the time to make sure that you're nurturing this student or this athlete as a whole person, right? You're following through and you're seeing it through the end. And I think that's super important, right? Because when you don't have like when you graduate and when you're going on to like the next thing in life, it's always like, oh shit, what the hell do I do now, right? And you're there to kind of give them that guidance and help them find their path and find their
Mm-hmm.
passion and walk with their purpose, right? And I think that's super amazing, honestly, and it takes very special people and it shows the heart you have. But I also wanted to remind you, like, don't get lost in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Still focus on you, remember that aspect, right? Because I feel like it
Mm-hmm.
can easily get, like I said, it's easy to get lost in the sauce in a sense, right? And you just remember that aspect where it's like you're important as well.
No, I appreciate that reminder for sure. It's definitely needed.
I kind of when I say that to people, I'm like, Austin, take your own advice. Like
Mm-hmm.
remember your own advice and take care of yourself. And you do amazing work. You talked about this summit you just put on. For people that aren't familiar, could you tell us a little bit more about it? How did it go? Will there be another one? Et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, there'll definitely be another one. Hopefully, we're in person for Paris 24 next year. But if not, it'll be hopefully be in person. Some aspect will be in person, 2024. But the summit was the inaugural Internationalization and Athletic Summit that I put on with my business walk with TFB. And what it did was focus on college sports, really athletics relationships, both at the college and professional level, at least this first time around, with internationalization practices that are happening, particularly within a university setting. So what that means in more layman terms is that we see college sport and even professional athletics becoming more global, whether that be with the influx of international athletes in the NCAA system, whether that be with the NBA, moving into Africa, Australia with their academies, but also hosting preseason games over in Europe. We've seen the NFL also host games in Europe, Mexico, but also having like a talent ID camp in Africa. And even on the women's side, the WNBA hosting a preseason game in Canada this upcoming summer. And so, as sports teams and organizations and leagues are becoming more global, essentially, how are we also taking care and honoring the humanity and the human aspect of both the athletes who are involved, but also the communities in which they are moving into and are working with? And so, had conversations around sport migration, sport diplomacy, athlete marketing, international athlete career development, future global sport from a research standpoint, and legit, like I said, bringing together 19 speakers from 8 countries, 5 continents to just talk about what's happening within their respective cultural contexts. But then also, how do we learn from each other to ensure that we are prioritizing again the humanity and the person in this multi-billion-dollar industry that we call sports around the world. And so that happened last week, and definitely excited for the future iterations of the summit as well.
It looked like it was a good success just from based off social media. And I think it's important, right? I think the education of the topics you're talking about are super important. And like you said, like sport is like a global thing. And I think we're
Mm-hmm.
seeing it more and more where I believe, like, if I remember correctly, like, isn't like South Carolina women's basketball team playing somewhere overseas this upcoming season?
Paris,
Yeah,
playing
that's what
Notre
I
Dame in
thought.
Paris. Yep.
Yeah, I was like, they're playing like it's just becoming more and more common for players and teams to play in different countries, or at least a game or different things of that nature. And I
Exactly.
think it's important to have the conversations early. right?
Mm.
Having conversations early can make things a lot easier in the future.
Hmm. But it's happening on purpose, yo. Like it's not like obviously Don Staley, multi-Olympian as a coach and player, going to Paris to play the first women's game, whatever, in Europe, and just so happens to be the same city that the Summer Olympics is happening next year. Come on now, it's not coincidence. I think once we get out of this coincidence and this like fandom of like, oh shit, like they're going to Paris, like I want to go. That was me too. I want to go to Paris and really uncover like why are they going? What impact is this going to have when they're recruiting? When French women or when French women's basketball players are identifying U.S. schools to go compete in, they're going to consider South Carolina Notre Dame, or they are European or French people over there are like looking to support U.S. colleges and universities. They might have an affinity towards South Carolina given they played it. And so I think how do we also think about what's happening outside of the actual competition itself, and then better prepare ourselves to not just educate but also again be equipped with the knowledge, skills, personnel, resources to then help to facilitate internationalization, sport globalization that's globally just, that is equitable, right? That's inclusive, and we can do that again if we get ahead, especially understanding that um, uh, LA 28, World Cup 26, Men's World Cup 26, Women's World Cup 27 might be coming here, World University Games, but rugby champion, they're all coming to the U.S. in the next 5 years. So how do we get ahead of this by first acknowledging what's happening and then position ourselves both as as both humans and resources to lead the way.
Hey, it's just you have to be intentional with everything that you do, and I think
I
people
see it.
are it's so easy to overlook. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people don't realize the things that go on in the backside of everything, the behind the
Mm-hmm.
scenes things that a lot of people don't realize, especially in sport. Right,
Mm-hmm.
working in sport. When I worked at FC Cincinnati, there's a lot of things that people don't realize that go into a game day experience,
Mm-hmm.
and just thinking of like international things, like the Gold Cup is coming to Cincinnati. It'll be here in July. So
Oh,
hopefully,
snap.
hopefully you can come down. You can. I think it's July 9th, 2 games at TQL Stadium. There's an
What?
opportunity for the U.S. men's national team to play the first game, and then Mexico could play right after them. So it's definitely something that you could look into. Maybe
Wow.
throw something together around that weekend.
Yeah.
Just because I got an email, like I could have bought tickets. If you get tickets to the first game, you automatically get to go to the second one. So it's a great experience, and I think it's something that you're a Cincinnati guy. So if you want to do something locally,
Yeah.
there's that opportunity for you, man.
You got me thinking. I'm over here looking at the schedule now. I did not know that. It's good to know.
Yeah. So last time we talked, I'm a huge mental health advocate. I talk about it in every episode. The last time we talked, you mentioned how your therapy was working out, going 6 days a week. You listened to a ton of music. I remember you said that you listened to over 266 hours of music on Spotify in 1 year, but
Mm-hmm.
also mentioned that you started therapy. So, my
Mm-hmm.
question for you is just with everything changing in your life and the progression that you've been going on, how have you been taking care of yourself mentally?
Yeah, the biggest thing is listening to my body. So I think it was, I lost a lot of weight going to Cuba, which is its own story, but didn't work out for 10 days, which really effed me up. Like not doing any fitness for 10 days. It wasn't whatever, one time in the schedule and whatnot. But really listening to my body to say, all right, if I don't feel like doing something, I'm just not going to do it. If I don't feel like working out, like just listen to your body and not working out, maybe choosing to do a more active recovery, like whether it be walking or whatnot. Continue to spend more time thinking. I think being honest with how I feel with people, which has been huge for me. I think another part is that this season is not just a season of abundance, if you will, but then also recognize that everyone can't go. And so being honest with myself and with others to be like this isn't purposeful for neither one or for the both of us. And so how do we either repurpose this relationship and or sever it so that I continue to keep my peace in the process? And so I've been much more uh, at peace and aligned than probably I've ever been, which is quite honestly just a reflection of the daily practices that I put in place for me to remain centered and grounded. I mean, of course, I'm not going to sit here and in front or lie that there aren't days that are better than others or worse than others, if you will, but feel way more aligned, way more grounded, way more secure in who I am at this point in my life. Um, and excited for what's next. There isn't any more teaching or learning or books I need to read or the podcast I need to listen to understand like what's next for me. This is just going to get the shit, to be honest. Just going to get it in a way that's rooted in faith and is rooted in you made excuses, Tim, you made excuses in some way or another the last X amount of weeks, months, years. Here's your time to really go get it and trust that the promise that God has already put on your life is going to come to fruition as you get active and walk in it.
Hey, I think the biggest thing there is you said like you are coming to terms with that. Not everyone can walk with you in this next season, right?
Well,
And those are difficult conversations, right? When you think about it, when you think of, I feel like everyone comes in your life for a reason, right? Whether they're there for a lifetime or just the season, like they have that purpose. And sometimes it's just better to kind of cut ties and keep going, right? I know sometimes we're like, I really want to save this like relationship or this friendship. But in reality, sometimes like taking that step away may be the best thing that's for you. And I think we also get lost, especially when you're like the helper, right? When you love like helping other people, that you lose sight of that, right? Where you're just like, I want to help, help. And then you just got to be like, okay, like back to the point is like, how do I put myself first, right? And I think you're doing that, and I think you're on the path, and you have so much success that's going to come in the future because you have the right mindset. I'm telling you, like you're approaching this whole next chapter of life the right way, right? It's easy to fold. It's easy to be like, oh fuck it, I give up. But you're not doing that. You're continuing to push forward, and you're continuing to strive. You're continuing to walk in your purpose. And every day you're finding a way to ignite your why, whether that's doing sport or doing something like your podcast. I think your business can really take off, especially with everything that you've been talking about. I feel like this is just the beginning for you. I feel like now you have the time to really invest in your business, build your brand, and really let people know what Walk with TFB really is, right? I feel like before, like you started, but then I'm be completely blunt and honest with you, that's just who I am, right? Like you started and you had this good thing going, and then it kind of just dropped off. Just from an outsider looking in, like that's kind of like what I've noticed. And it was just like you had the passion, but then you focused everything else on something that wasn't like truly yours, like your own. And now it's like, okay, hone in on this, take it to the next level, because I know you can do it, right? You have the connections, you have the passion, it's all there. It's just now like you're in this season, so go get it, bro. Like take it and run with it, because it has so much potential, bro.
So like I said, so when I hit you up to be connected with FCC, I need a response back so I can go talk to their people. But it's been wild. Like I said before, there was no like woe is me or damn Tim, that's fucked up. It was like everyone, generally speaking, everyone's like, oh, you'll be all right. You Tim, you'll bounce back. Ain't no worry. What's next? I think that's what's been indicative of like, yeah, MS told me to go get this shit for real, for real. And I think again, to your point, now I'm at a point where it's like there's no more excuses. Like when I pick up the phone, call, I need something. I need you to run it back. I need it.
I think that's the thing, is just being stern in what you believe in, going after it. It's just, when you want something, you gotta fucking work for it. No matter how many times you get told no, you're gonna get told multiple times, right? It's not about how many times you get knocked down. It's how you get back up and keep fighting, right?
Exactly.
And I think it's just, I'm excited to see where you go. Honestly, like
me too.
I know like you're gonna break the glass ceiling. Like it's gonna be. I'm telling you, remember the name.
I appreciate
Bryson,
it, man.
I'm telling you.
I'm coming. I'm definitely coming. Don't you worry about that.
No, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to hop on here and just have a nice conversation. It's been nice catching up. If you're ever back in Cincinnati, just let me know. We can link up. I usually always have an extra ticket to an FC Cincinnati game because I don't really have friends. So
let's go. Look, you know me. That's first step. FCC is first step for sure. So I'll be back late May, early June. So we'll definitely link for sure.
I still have connections at FC Cincinnati. So just let
sure.
me know.
But I'll say this, man.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you can go.
I'll say this. I think that the exciting thing about the future is that there are people like yourself who continue to invest in me and provide or create platforms for me to share, which I definitely appreciate. Want to say thank you and give you your flowers, both on screen but also on audio as well. But then too, then you see me wearing this hat on purpose. It's 5134L, man. Like, I'm big. I don't know when it started properly. Probably since we last spoke, to be honest, last year and a half, where you see different, whether it's rappers or athletes, particularly LeBron, of course, like just a kid from Ohio piece, but just owning where they're from, whether it be Atlanta or LA or obviously it's bigger cities. But I'm like, why not us? I know this whole the Bengals thing, right? But why not Cincy? And so I'm a kid from Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm a kid from Ohio. And whatever I do, I want to make sure people know I'm not from South Carolina. Like people think I'm not from DC at all. I am from Cincinnati, Ohio. I rep Cincinnati 5134Ls on purpose, and excited to see what yourself, myself, but also others who are in the city and who are from the city, I continue to do to shape not just the future of the respective industries in the U.S., but also how we take over this shit and represent and put Cincy on the map for the world to see as well.
I tell people all the time, like, I might not be from Cincinnati. I'm gonna let you know. I'm from Covington, right across the bridge, and I feel the same way. Right? It's just like when I go out of town, people are like, "Oh, like." I tell people like I'm from Covington, and when I explain it, I'm like I'm right across the bridge from Cincinnati. Right? 5 minutes. I tell people all the time my whole life is in Cincinnati, basically. Besides family, we all live in Northern Kentucky. But I agree with you. I think it's just putting our cities on the map, right? Because there's so much talent and there's so much talent in our youth. I work with them all the time and I see it. I see the potential. And I tell people, it's just like, what are we doing to give them those resources to be successful, to make it out, to have that opportunity, to have that chance? Because that's all it takes is for one person to give you that opportunity, one person to give you that belief. And it can go a long way, especially when you work with the inner city youth. I feel like odds are kind of stacked against us from the get-go, especially when you have different barriers and just like when you think of life and just this conversation can go a lot deeper, but it's just giving people an opportunity. And I think it's amazing how you rep Cincinnati proud. I rep Cincinnati sports proud because like there's nothing in Kentucky besides Kentucky basketball, and even now like they are hit or miss. They have a good regular season, but then the tournament comes around and it's trash. But I do appreciate you taking the time out of your day. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Of course, bro.
Excited to see your journey unfold and see where this life takes you. Where can people catch your podcast? That's one thing we did not talk about, where they can listen and when it comes out and things of that nature.
Yeah, so similar to Ignite Your Why, you can find it on Spotify, podcasts as well as Apple Podcasts. Make sure you subscribe and leave us a mass review, 5 stars, but only if you mean it. Podcast will be dropping every Tuesday, 6 a.m. Eastern time, starting with tomorrow, May 2nd. So again, we're gearing back up. Austin, to your point, got a lot of exciting shit coming this season. And hold the people ready, man. Because like I said, I'm not fucking around no more. Like, it's definitely time that we go get this shit like I dreamed about. Like the people like yourself believe in me to go do. And so May 2nd, every Tuesday, 6 a.m. Eastern, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Let's walk.
Hey, now you guys have something to do every Tuesday and Thursday.
Exactly.
Listen to Walk with TFB on Tuesdays, Ignite Your Why on Thursdays. So thank you all for listening in. One more thing before we go. Totally forgot. If anyone wants to continue having a conversation with you, man, about anything we talked about today, how can they get a hold of you?
Oh, yeah. Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Timothy F. Bryson. On all platforms. Probably the easiest way to do. I think my Twitter, my Instagram is my baby picture, but you'll know who I am. Timothy F. Bryson.
All right. Thank you all for listening in. Make sure you follow us on all social media platforms at Ignite Your Why. That's on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, all of it. It's at Ignite Your Why. Thanks again for listening in. And always remember, find your purpose and ignite your why. Peace. Boom.